Hello, welcome to the Amnify IoT webinars. Thanks for joining. I will give the other registrants a couple of minutes to join. I think we already have a quite good audience looking forward for the webinar, but please be patient for another minute or so. Okay, then let's start. My name is Christian Henke. I'm head of product at Amnify, and I will be guiding you through our webinar today. We have several webinars like this happening, and we are always trying to get industry experts together to share their knowledge, their expertise, and their learnings. And I'm very, very pleased to have Reza, CEO of Envio Systems, joining us today. Reza has already been at one of our meetups, and he is super energetic, and I'm very happy to have him on board, and he can share some learnings when building the IoT solution. Before Reza will introduce Envio Systems, I wanted to give a quick introduction about Amnify, because some people may just not be aware of us. And then we will, of course, also have a live Q&A session, so you have directly the possibility to talk to Reza and ask him how he may be able to help you with your solution. I will start with the live Q&A with a couple standard questions that people are usually asking, and then you will have the chance to ask your questions. So, but just first, short introduction to Amnify. So, who's not aware, Amnify is a cellular connectivity provider, and our SIM cards basically have not only global coverage, but are also working network independent, so you can use any network on it. And we are really focused on the IoT world, and with that, enterprises using our SIM cards, they can manage the SIM cards within our portal and also with our API. So with this, our customers are actually able to sell connectivity within their solution. And as you can see, we have really customers from all verticals, 1,100 customers in 80 different countries. From really startups just figuring out their solution and probably learning a lot in these webinar series, up to large corporations that are selling tens of thousands of devices per year. So usually what we see is that these IoT solutions are mostly focused on B2B, so like also Envio, selling to businesses, services or products, and there's a high demand of the quality of the connectivity and also the support, and that's where we come into play. And as Amnify, let's say what distinguishes us from traditional operators is that we really focus on IoT and that all our network infrastructure is in the cloud, because that's where we see IoT solutions are being developed. And with that, we have some nice integrations and some value statements, but I don't want to talk too much about Amnify. If you want to learn about Amnify, just check our website or you can contact me directly. And now after this short introduction, I will hand it over to Reza, who will present how Envio is making smart building. Reza, I will hand over the presentation to you. And
perfect. There we go. So, hi everyone. Really great to have the opportunity. Thank you, Christian, for having me back. Really appreciate it. Really enjoy working with Amnify and just bringing forward more ideas into the industry of how we can apply IoT globally. For those of you who don't happen to know me already, my name is Reza Alaghehband. I am the founder and CEO of Envio Systems. And kind of the story goes to roughly about 8 years ago. I was working within the industry for commercial real estate automation. And there was a massive lack of technology within that industry. They were held behind pretty dramatically, and it wasn't a popular thing. We began working on this before even IoT was really a term that was utilized out there. What we were trying to do is implement machine-to-machine communications, primarily because going into existing infrastructure and trying to upgrade them, one of the most costly parts of it and the barrier to entry is actually going in and wiring stuff. So kind of the rationale behind it was, hey, what if we go in, if we can utilize a wireless mesh network, it will enable the growth of and reduce the cost for implementation and all the value propositions that come with that. I'll get into a couple challenges and what we kind of do, but that's where things kicked off. And we began targeting a market, which is now, for those of you who are not in the industry, but are in IoT, IoT industry within commercial real estate, I think is only second to residential. And it's projected to be about a $64 billion industry in the next 2 years. It's growing by about 20% a year, which is monstrous for that. And it can actually enable a lot of things. So we developed our own end-to-end solution to be able to really transform existing commercial real estate and connect systems that were in silos and enable them all to communicate together, being able to manage it all from the web. So I'll give you a little bit of a short video introduction on our system. Hopefully it helps.
How hard does your building work? What if it could work a little smarter? Or a lot smarter? Introducing Envio, a complete suite of building management software and IoT devices that meter, operate, and optimize operations, turning any building into a smart one. So what enables Envio buildings to be smart? Wireless controllers operate everything from lighting to ventilation to heating and cooling, connected to hundreds of sensors that collect information around the clock. Using artificial intelligence, Envio not only learns the most efficient way to utilize energy based on how you interact with your building, but automatically adjusts its performance in real time. This gives you a truly connected, fully autonomous, self-managing building that saves you between 20 and 70% of the energy otherwise wasted. And you don't need a new building to make it smart. With plug-and-play connectivity and automated configuration, it can easily and affordably be installed into any existing structure. You can also connect multiple buildings on its web-based platform, creating new efficiencies across your entire company. Who doesn't love saving time, money, and the environment? Discover how Envio Systems make any building into a smart one.
So one of the key things is inevitably the technology is going to enable infrastructure to be connected via the web. It has huge benefits in being able to process more than ever before possible. Now, within commercial buildings, what most people don't know is that they often run with less intelligence than the cell phone you have in your pocket today. They don't keep any information. They just use basically timers and very basic programming, and very few people can maintain it. So it's not a very user-friendly solution that's currently out there. What we wanted to do is make it simple, straightforward, easy to use, and affordable for everybody to adopt. But to do this, we had to actually create some really revolutionary technologies to help us get there. But what most people don't know is, how do you actually make a building, a commercial building, smart? Everybody wants a smart building. But the key to it is, a lot of people find out that you end up going for IoT devices, which make kind of a piecemeal. One functionality can be performed by this system, another one with this system, and trying to kind of incorporate them together turns into complete chaos. But there are huge opportunities. There is more and more technologies coming to market right now, which provide numerous functionalities that can benefit it, and attempting to kind of standardize and create an ecosystem is one of by far the biggest challenges in the industry. They're allowing them to be able to actually communicate together and work together, systems, and integrate them produces unbelievable efficiencies. I mean, we've had projects where buildings have reduced energy consumption by up to 70%. That's not average, but I mean, within the capability for us to do it, we hit on average between 10 to 30 with relative ease, utilizing information, that just connecting it to the cloud, storing information, making predictions, and moving forward. But there are other functionalities that the market's seen a tremendous amount of traction for. Space utilization, preemptive maintenance for operations, analytics for energy and utility consumption, different optimizations so that you feed the data in for the buildings and have buildings become more reactive or proactive rather than reactive. But in order to actually connect a existing commercial building, it's actually incredibly challenging. Now, the first step you actually have to take is connecting to these systems, and there might be legacy systems that are, 30, 40 years old, equipment that was never even designed to connect to the web. And in order to be able to be successful at it, you have to go in and be able to get your hands on it and enable all these devices to basically communicate with each other. So the first step is actually just walking in there and enabling it with the technology to be able to take any sensor, any device, any motor, fan, valve, damper, actuator, pump within the building and have them all start talking the same language. Now, you can do that with the existing infrastructure or by adding new equipment, devices, wireless devices to be able to enable it. Now, once you begin collecting the information, kind of getting it in a standardized way to the web and it's reliable, you can begin collection of that information and standardizing and defining what these different types of equipment, sensors, actuators actually are. So you need a frame of reference for if you're going to make a successful model and optimize buildings based on IoT. Your system needs to know which one is the sensor, where is that sensor, what's it associated with, how can it help other pieces of equipment, how does it apply to it, and how do you kind of utilize the information from historically to be able to make better operating decisions in the future. And to do this, it's not easy. You have dozens or hundreds of different languages that you can have it in, even different protocols, both on the hardware side of it, but generally within commercial buildings, one of the most difficult things is that it's up to whoever programmed that building, because they get programmed on an individual basis, of what they decide to actually call specific devices. So regardless of an equipment being exactly what it is, like a pump being a pump, they can name it as a light, just because they feel like it. So you don't necessarily know what it is, how it configures, and how it actually works. So that's by far one of the most challenging things, is relabeling, tagging, organizing, creating associations to be able to have these systems and devices understand each other and essentially have what's called a digital twin. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with that, but it's kind of like a virtual digital representation of the physical equipment. And to do that, the best way to be able to optimize and actually recreate something is to recreate the pieces that it has in a digital way. And then you have the capability to begin kind of understanding its features, functions, operations. Now, once all the data is feeding into the system, you kind of get this opportunity to begin seeing how and, the opportunities for optimizations, but first seeing how it's actually operating. The systems that are out there today are so relatively archaic that this information previously wasn't collected. So the data sets were not available for making very many advanced algorithms or system optimizations. Now, once you begin analyzing, you can begin kind of looking for trends, patterns, standard deviations between the different types of equipment. Are they performing the way they should be? Are they performing, operating outside of common hours? But it gives you the capability to actually begin figuring out what this equipment is doing. And the question comes in of, should it be doing that? Once you bring in all that insight, this is where you can apply kind of the intelligence behind it. So machine learning for optimizations, artificial intelligence for predictions, and then determine, okay, now we understand how it actually is operating. In the optimal scenario, it would be operating like this, and then turning it back around to be able to actually implement those recommendations without just, generally sending out a report and telling someone to do it, but truly being able to implement those actions, resulting in fully autonomous, really reactive, intelligent infrastructure, which also allows the open ecosystem now, because you've defined everything that's in there. As you add different sensors and features and functions, it's easy to enable the communication between these systems, because now they're all talking the same language. So if you just simply bring in one other kind of device, you can create associations with them, and logic that would previously have to be programmed manually every single time, which is incredibly costly, can end up being dynamic and self-implemented. So what makes this tough is that within buildings, there's just legacy equipment galore. Incredibly inefficient, wasteful, but it presents a really huge opportunity. Now, the challenge with it is that within buildings, there's about 80 different languages that they can speak. There's legacy protocols absolutely everywhere, and it's infuriating because every single time someone tries to find one perfect standard protocol, there ends up just being one extra protocol that gets added to the bunch. But there are dozens. Every manufacturer has one. Various systems have one. So one of the key critical things in being able to actually digitalize these buildings is, again, standardization. And then once you have that and the buildings are capable of really becoming web connected, talking to the other equipment, some pretty phenomenal things happen. So what we do is we go in and go step by step through that process. to fully enable actual digital buildings and provide connectivity and automation and control like it's never been possible before. Walking in there and enabling kind of IoT for equipment that was never designed to have that capability, and opening up the doors for various and phenomenal functionalities, which I'll actually get into. It's incredibly cool. So nerdy but cool. We have our first step is, as we go into the system, we've developed a gateway device where you put it on the network and it standardizes a lot of those various languages so that you can communicate between devices. We kind of work like a Google Translate. The second one being, as there are more standalone devices and API after API, the 80 or so languages that out there that currently exist are skyrocketing. They're being added more and more on a daily basis. So we went from the ground up, developed a hardware to be able to connect to all these systems and communicate with them and enable them to do various functionalities and capabilities like preemptive maintenance, detection, but also did it in a way that's incredibly affordable so that it can actually be implemented and utilized not just by brand new commercial high rises, which are 100,000, 200,000 square meters, but actually even starting from a scalable system, which goes from a single zone, so basically one room, all the way up to those guys, which is actually fairly transformative. Now, what happens is once you begin web enabling these commercial buildings, it actually opens up the door for various functionalities, technology, sensors, IoT devices to actually become incorporated into the building and as part of the overall system rather than one standalone solution. So when you come in, you go into an existing building, we've digitalized it, and now you can add a indoor air quality sensor. You just point out where it is and it creates locational relationships with all the equipment around it intelligently, and so that when there's nobody in the room, it begins turning down the ventilation. If the air quality is poor, it increases ventilation so that you actually have reactive buildings, which is where we spend about 90% of our time indoors. And so it makes a very, very big difference for not just the energy consumption, health and wellness, but also operations and maintenance of those buildings. So actually on the screen, you see a couple of the third-party apps we've implemented already. And there's actually quite a few more of them we have in the pipeline. And as I was saying, what it does is there's a value proposition with IoT being in commercial real estate in multiple different ways. What you have to know is who is your end customer. And there are various stakeholders within real estate. So it's actually really fascinating where you can go and knowing who's ultimately going to be paying and the value proposition aligns with who the same person that is paying gets the benefit or at least partial benefit is critical. So when you're going into commercial real estate, you don't necessarily have just one person, you have three groups. You have the building owner, you have the building operator and facility management company, and you may have the tenant. And you can have any weird combination of those. So you have to make sure that the value you're presenting to the right person, essentially. But the technology coming in can enable various business functionalities, capabilities for any one of them. For example, we're working with a company called DT. We're enabling more efficient operations within the building by scanning and monitoring the pipes for Legionella disease based on temperature of it. We have other ones where business processes were incorporated into, for example, grocery stores that would normally have to do frequent temperature checks. But once your building is fully integrated and connected, it's all automated. So it provides the capability to reduce costs for the clients by optimizing their business processes, reducing their downtime, but there are dozens of different verticals and categories where IoT can apply and making the industry so much more efficient than it is today. But there's also, we're working with insurance companies, for example, that want to make sure that they, not only are we just getting an alert if there's a flood detected or water leak detected, we can actually, being connected to the building system, we can open and close valves to prevent further damage rather than just simply notifying someone, seeing and hoping that they're gonna go and resolve the problem before it's too late. So categorically, there's two types of facilities that you can integrate into. For us, we had to create two pieces of hardware. One is a universal controller that can connect any analog or digital piece of equipment or bus equipment to the rest of the building infrastructure. Those are for the buildings that essentially have zero built-in controllers and automation. They have standalone systems throughout it. And then there is the buildings with a BMS. Those ones we can actually just utilize a gateway device that we have connected through LTE network, which can actually be able to communicate directly to the BMS. And that is for the larger and mid-sized commercial buildings. As a result, you get the capability to bring on something that really is completely unique to and foreign to what a lot of people have seen to date, combining various functionalities, capabilities, making really the future of management of commercial real estate truly interactive and easy to operate. If most of you if you've ever seen one of these screens, it's almost like looking at DOS from like the 90s trying to operate these systems. It's pretty painful. So it is unique in terms of visually representing it and actually incorporating UX into the operations of utilizing technology and allowing people to kind of get onboarded faster, learn how to utilize the system in a very simple way, and allow them to actually customize and provide insights for them to operate the facilities better. Some of the largest markets we're kind of seeing right now for us has primarily been in Europe. We're originally a Canadian company where Germany stole us a few years back after an accelerator program. So we're based in Berlin with about 40 some odd people now. And yeah, thank you very much. Hopefully I didn't bore everybody.
Hey, Reza, thanks for the insights. I always like how you also put out the challenges, right? So who are you selling actually the solution to? Even if you can save 50% of your energy consumption in a building, who's paying for it actually, and who do you sell your solution to?
Yeah.
Let me so format-wise, let's go on with the Q&A. So there's some questions that I prepared. I know that the audience will be interested, but also please feel free to use the question panel of the GoToWebinar and ask more questions, which I will incorporate. There is already a question about Amnify, which is fine, which I'm also happy to answer. So whatever you like. Okay, 1 minute speed Q&A. Let me just share my screen. Or I think it is already shared. So, Reza, what are the current industry trends and how will those change and develop in the future?
This is actually really fascinating. Some of the industry trends I really didn't ever see coming. One of the ones being involving COVID. As we're kind of all sitting at home and trying to kind of still be as productive and moving forward, there's a lot more focus on number one, technologies that are driving personal distance, being able to manage that, measure that. That's a really big one. Indoor air quality is a really big one too, but also a lot of the larger companies we're working with right now are exceptionally interested in how do we utilize our space better? How do we make this into a more flexible space? What if, right now we're paying for real estate that half of it, everybody's working from home, and it's really going to transform the way the industry operates because people are finding out that working from home, actually, some of the people end up actually being more productive. So
yeah, I can imagine smart buildings and the industry is really benefiting. That's one of the winners actually of the corona, I would suppose, because of the digitalization can really bring a lot of benefits in the hygiene and air quality part.
definitely, and it's sped up the adoption of technology. So it's been a very, very big one.
Cool. How will IoT be applied within the industry now and in the future? So it's a little bit similar, I guess, the question, but how would you see, what devices will we see?
We've seen some incredibly cool ones. We're a part of quite a few different accelerator programs, and as being part of it, our technology and I get the tremendous opportunity to be exposed to the latest and greatest. We've seen the capability for utilizing IoT for collecting real-time data for equipment operations and actually taking that and applying it to augmented reality. This is one of my favorite ones, so that you can walk around in a building and you have your phone up, you're seeing the space, but you're also seeing the equipment behind the walls and actually being able to see in real time stats applying for it. So it's kind of a convergence of various technologies coming together to create stuff that's new and unique. I think I saw your son run back there too.
Yeah, I told him he's not supposed to come in. That's home office, right? You know that.
Yeah. Welcome to the new normal.
Yeah, but I think it's fine. So I'm getting used to it. I hope everyone else does as well. We all have families, I guess.
Occasionally my dog attacks me while I'm on video.
Okay, let's continue. So now I think we go a little bit more technical. Which type of sensors do you use and how did you select them? Like maybe also how did you select the vendor?
That's actually a really good question. We go through a ton of different devices, sensors, and we pick very few that we actually rely on to be able to be utilized. There's a couple different ways to do it. We generally take the time to test every single one because it does take us a whole lot of effort. We have to pick the ones that will be incorporated into our system. So we get them, and we've got various categories of different sensors we utilize, but they have to be incredibly reliable, which has been the challenge of people who don't fully understand how to apply the technology into really commercial real estate, because the walls create huge barriers for communication to be able to reconnect. So it's kind of narrowband IoT. LoRa ends up being very valuable in those applications when necessary, that you're going in the, a bunker that is a Faraday cage inside a building. We test them out, we try them, and we listen to a lot of customer feedback. So if we have clients who really like a technology that they've proven it out, they've implemented it, they usually come to us and say, we have this, can we incorporate it into everything else? And then we work with them to be able to integrate it into our platform so they've got one central location to manage and monitor and control everything from.
Okay, thanks. What does your network architecture looks like? So you said you have a gateway, I guess, that takes like things like LoRa to connect to the sensors and then to the outside, and maybe also how does your architecture look on the application side?
So there's a few different kind of tech specs we use for between our gateway and communicating within the buildings, but our network architecture is set up so that we've got multiple layers to deal with any sort of flexibility that's required within the buildings for implementation. So we use, right now we're actually in the middle of transitioning to a new wireless protocol for local communication. So device to device, we're using multi-layered, we're using Bluetooth mesh to be able to talk to any Bluetooth device, we're using Zigbee, we're using Thread. We're incorporating sub-gigahertz communication just so that we can enable interoperability between these local devices. And then all of it gets aggregated and kind of sent over to our gateway device, which is then connected via LTE. We utilize it because if you're going into these facilities, oftentimes you're going to have a lot of hoops to jump through depending on the client in terms of security, and relying on someone else's external network is never a great thing to do, because you don't know whether it's your device going down or whether it's their network going down. And then so you want to maintain that communication capability between your device and that. And so we have local communication, and then it always gets aggregated through our gateway for web connectivity.
Cool. Yeah, that's what we also see, that the Wi-Fi from a customer you don't want to utilize because it ends up in finger pointing.
Yeah. We've learned that a lot.
What were the first challenges when financing the product?
Do you mean the development, or do you mean the sale?
When you started off, right? So like usually the first step, like I see a lot of innovators that have a great idea and even have a prototype that they built, and then what's the next steps and how did you finance that?
Painfully. Hardware is incredibly challenging. It's gotten a lot better over the last 3 or 4 years, but at the time when we were first going out there, it was the big SaaS push and the big software run where everybody's just trying to make software, not realizing that the hardware capabilities provide a competitive advantage and a stickiness factor to it that creates value. And every door of every VC I would go to, as soon as you mention hardware, they just slam the door and you never hear from them again. That's turned around quite a bit in the last few years. So originally, it's not really that affordable to be able to create a hardware system, because you have to develop software, you have to develop firmware, you have to develop wireless communication. And we went through and initially I begged and pleaded from everybody I knew. So what we had was I had a lot of people who were familiar with me being in this industry, and we did initially started with a family and friends round. Then we used that and leveraged that to secure government grants for R&D, and then leveraged that to kind of go into our seed round was around I can't remember, about $1 million. And it got us to our very first prototype. I was ridiculously naive to try and think, you know, creating the entire system from end to end was going to be easy and I'd be done in a couple of years, exited and just sitting on a beach in Mexico. It was a brutal challenge, especially with the challenges you face on the network side of it. But once we had a prototype, we proved it out. Now the market and industry has changed incredibly over the last, especially for prop tech. In the last, I'd say about 18 months, they're really looking at technology and IoT with an infrastructure. So there's now finally, there are VCs dedicated to being able to finance technologies that are going into it. But we did our B round, we did our seed round, family and friends round, then seed round from VCs, and then we did our Series A about last year. And then, yeah, so it's convincing people that you can make money off of hardware. And also convincing them that that's not going to be a barrier to scalability, because that is usually, hardware is capital intensive. You need, and it's complex, you need inventory, you need return purchases, you need to be able to ship stuff and logistics, manufacturing, and none of that stuff is a breeze. So you have to just convince them that you know what you're doing and you can do it. But in the digital age that you can really order whatever you want out of China, off of Alibaba, to do it at a fraction of the cost you used to be able to, it's easily possible.
Yeah, what I always see is if there's a big challenge, then there's also a big gain. And for me, it's like IoT is, it's like with the service offerings that we see, you don't sell products, right? You sell actually the digitization service to these companies. And with that, you're bringing huge value, and similar to software as a service, so that's gaining traction.
It enables the hardware. You know, the hardware can enable the service. And then once you do, it's incredibly valuable.
Exactly. Hey, which design choice did you regret, and which was the best one you did?
Ooh, that one's a toughie. Which design choice do I regret the most? So there was, initially when we were first launching, we had the choice of spending a little more time and a little more effort into either making it quick, dirty, and cheap and manufacturing a really large board, which had a lot of space on it, or spending the time and being able to really make it compact, sleek, implementation easy to use, easy to work, easy to implement. And we were at the time, I thought we were in a giant rush. So we ended up taking our original prototype design, which was about that big, and ultimately cramming every functionality and didn't spend the time to optimize it. And then there's a reason why our hardware was called the Cube, because it was actually a cube. Then by the time we were done this hardware, it was actually called the Rectangle, because it was huge. And it made for a pretty big challenge in #1 installation and everything else. So I regret not spending a little more time being certain about the design and optimizing it and really designing it for mass manufacturing. The best functional design was, I think, one technical decision we made initially that got us to where we are today was, which actually it fills both. At the time, it was the right decision. Ultimately, and in hindsight, it wasn't. A big one is in our local wireless mesh network, we picked at the time was a very small company based out of Alabama, nobody had ever heard of, with a proprietary wireless module for local wireless mesh. And after testing, I would say, any wireless protocol that was out there, this was the only one that just blew me away. And I was able to just get in my car, put the base station at my house, get in my car and start driving to see how far it would actually, the communication would go. And it was outstanding. I was at least a kilometer away and I was just sold right there. The challenge is that you end up relying on someone who you don't know how they're going to deliver. They ended up being managed fairly poorly, and they decided to go in all sorts of different directions and stopped focusing on their core product, which was the wireless technology. And so ultimately, we had to pick up something that was really similar to it, but now there are a lot more options than we had at the time. But the only reason why we got to it, we still had the only wireless technology that could go through multiple concrete floors to build a mesh network so that we didn't need repeaters everywhere. So it was really cool.
Cool. Okay, I think that's the last one. When selecting a smart building solution, what should buyers look out for?
A few things. There is right now a lot of vaporware out there and PowerPoint products, which isn't bad. I mean, when you're first starting up, but just make promises that you can deliver on. So should definitely look and test the technology. Look for references and look for a system that is open and scalable and easy to implement. There are systems out there that, you know, are somewhat comparable to what we do or one piece of what we do, but trying to integrate them into the whole ecosystem is brutally painful. And when it takes us, you know, speed is your friend in order to be able to scale the company. So when it takes us a couple of days to implement versus we have other companies that takes them months to repeat the same thing that we do. But test it out. Make people put their money where their mouth is.
Okay. With that, we close our 1 minute Q&A, and we have already several questions on the chat. Let me start out with a question. For an installation in a building or a small habitat, does it propound a modification of the installation already in place, like IT and electrical wiring? So would you need to change something that's already existing, or could you just build it up on top?
We do both. To be able to kind of improve on the existing infrastructure, we have to be able to tie into the stuff that's there. But, and as an initial step, what we normally do is just go lay on top of everything that's there and digitally begin aggregating all of them, getting them all to talk the same language, make them interoperable, and then get them online and be able to manage it that way. Then if they're looking to add anything into the system, you can do it however you want. You can do it through wireless IoT device where they may have their own backend where we're communicating via API, or it may be wired old school systems that are monitoring. So both, basically. You have to be incredibly flexible.
Cool. Then there are a couple of questions what is the average data consumption between cloud and local server?
That is interesting.
What would you need to pay us, Reza, actually?
Oh, man, it is brutal. I know we have optimizations available, but we have, we just did a project for one of the largest malls in Europe, and they have 100,000 data points, continuously feeding us data in real time. We go through gigabytes and gigabytes of data on a weekly basis. So depending on the size of building, depending on the data points, depends on the frequency, but we need high frequency, and we keep the communication and connection open, and we're continuously monitoring everything, analyzing it, so it uses massive amounts of data.
Okay. Yeah, so there were some questions around why we're actually having this. So maybe I didn't make this clear in the beginning. So and what's the connection between Envio and Amnify? Actually, I think we just have been lucky to get to know Reza from our environment. So there's not yet, maybe in the future, a customer relationship. But actually, for us, it's just we want to share great thoughts about people like Reza that are building IoT solutions and have insights. And this is why we're presenting this use case. Yeah? So it is not connected directly to what we do, say connectivity. It's really about IoT solutions because that's what we believe our customers are building, and not just focusing on the connectivity piece, which is just a very small piece of the overall solution. Yeah, then there's also some appreciation for you, Reza. Very good solution, good work, and I think that kind of summarizes the presentation. I'm very happy with what we have seen. I see that the audience stuck along and enjoyed the presentation as well. And Reza, thanks for being with us, and hope to talk to you again soon. Maybe also again in person.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah, as we move back into the office. Well, there's one, but there's another question, but you can maybe answer that offline. There was one about coverage for Amnify, but please check our coverage page on amnify.com. There's a coverage page where you see where Amnify has coverage and can provide you the cellular connectivity for your smart building or fleet management solution. Hey, Reza,
I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, man. Have a good one.
Hopefully it was valuable.
Bye-bye.
Bye.